Hello, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at. A debate in City Council is brewing over Mayor Johnson's decision to end the controversial gunshot detection system known as ShotSpotter.
I know where tens of thousands of illegal guns are right now.
Thousands of Cook County residents have had their firearm ID card revoked, so why haven't they turned over their licenses and guns? And they are officially here. What you can expect in the next couple of weeks from our new cicada neighbors. And now to some of today's top stories. One person was killed and 45 others were injured over the weekend in 31 separate shooting incidents. Chicago police say one of them was a mass shooting Saturday night in the 700 block of South Albany Avenue, which wounded 6 people, 3 of them critically. Separately, a 38-year-old man was killed late Sunday night in the 500 block of North Leamington Avenue. And in another shooting, a 12-year-old boy was also wounded by a bullet while riding his bike Saturday night in the South Chicago neighborhood. And on a programming note, join us this Wednesday evening as we explore issues of public safety on WTTW News, A Safer City. Howard Brown Health says a multi-million-dollar budget deficit is forcing the organization to close 2 of its clinics. The health center announced today that it would close its Diversey and Thresholds South clinics by early fall. In a release, the organization says its $6 million budget deficit was created by a changing funding landscape. Meanwhile, the center says affected staff will be reassigned to other Howard Brown Health sites where positions are available, and patients will be able to receive care within 15 minutes of their current care site. A number of Chicago's elected officials joined the Cook County Board of Commissioners today to remember Clerk Karen Yarbrough, who died suddenly in early April.
She was tough. People talk about this kind Karen, and I'm still looking for her. But when she dealt with us, she was very tough, but she had great expectations because she knew that there were great things that needed to be done in our community. There were great things that needed to be done on behalf of our people, and that she was a constant force.
Cook County commissioners passed a resolution in remembrance of Yarbrough, who became the first black woman to hold the position of county clerk when she was elected in 2018. She had also served as county recorder of deeds and as a state representative. Up next, the debate over dropping the controversial ShotSpotter technology. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
A battle is brewing in Chicago City Hall over the controversial gunshot detection system known as ShotSpotter. Earlier this year, Mayor Brandon Johnson decided not to renew the city's contract for the technology. That choice has been slammed by some city council members who say the mayor overstepped. And while many still debate the value of the system, they're now calling for a vote on a measure that would give alderpeople the power to make that decision for their own wards. Joining us now with more are Alderman David Moore of the 17th Ward and Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez of the 25th Ward. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Alderman Moore, let's start with you, please. What is it that you're calling for here?
So this order specifically calls for more data collection and more transparency throughout the life of the current ShotSpotter contract. It also calls that the administration notify the city council in advance of any decisions to remove any violence prevention funding, including sound thinking ShotSpotter from any ward, and also hold a meeting of the Public Safety Committee prior to any removal and with the full vote of the city council. That is what this order is calling for.
And tell me why you think this order is necessary.
Because it was the city council who approved the funding for ShotSpotter in the first place as a tool which will help our communities. It's a tool that not only our residents know that it's helping our community, but the superintendent, who we all overwhelmingly voted to put in office, who the administration selected, who is very well respected, who is the subject matter expert that is in charge of keeping this city safe, is a tool that he says he needs for the department. And so it's a tool that I sincerely hope that this administration considers keeping.
Alderman Sigcho Lopez, the mayor has said he has no plans on reversing course on this. What is your take on what Alderman Moore is calling for?
Well, thank you. And I support the mayor fulfilling his campaign commitment that follows an Inspector General report. I think that the data is very clear. The Inspector General back in 2021 actually did a detailed analysis when he showed that the police department in 86% of the occasions responded to calls that did not call for a gun-related incident. There's many things that get clouded in these southboard. There's $33 million that I think, again, the Inspector General has reported already on this issue that is not a good use of public dollars. I do think that I agree with Alderman Moore that our money is better spent actually in violence prevention teams. Right now, the CDPH has a violence intervention program or work on a block-to-block basis. And also we need to improve our dispatching alerts. I think that when we start a subboard that has not done justice to the many, many calls that we received, I do think that we need to improve that. I already reached out to OEMC as well as the superintendent to discuss better ways to do that. That I started making sure that, for instance, as we're starting to do rerouting domestic violence calls or mental health calls in a different systems like 998 will help us address this issue. But again, going again with a subword that has shown very poor outcomes, I do think it does not serve the city of Chicago.
Alderman Sigcho Lopez, Alderman Moore has expressed concern that gun violence could climb without the ShotSpotter technology. Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, we already have had a ShotSpotter for a number of years at a cost of $33 million. I do think that we will be better off using those $33 million, actually going to the block-by-block level, understanding the root causes of violence, understanding that there are alternatives to that. And again, that our 911 calls and our 98 calls are actually being analyzed. I do agree that we do have an issue dispatching, but that issue actually happens to be caused also, as the Inspector General reported, by faulty software like ShotSpotter. I do think that the mayor is looking at the data. I do think that we as legislators, we need to look at alternatives. I do need that we need to address the issues that we got with dispatching, but also following the Inspector General report, we clearly had to do more work around the root causes, addressing the issues that we have along, especially in our poorest areas where we shut down mental health clinics, we shut down schools. I do think there's a need for investment and a need for the city to do a better job in how we hold our own institutions accountable. I do think the subject matter expert here is actually the Inspector General, as we have also questioned some reports that the Inspector General put to make sure that, for instance, we don't have extremists in the rank and file of the Chicago Police Department. I do think the superintendent has to also listen to those reports by the Inspector General.
I want to get Alderman Moore in here. Alderman Moore, what about what some of Alderman Sigcho Lopez has expressed? How do you balance the need for other methods to respond to some of the ills in our society, to violence, but with also the need to ensure that communities are safe and not rife with gun violence?
Yeah, first of all, the Inspector General is somebody I truly respect and support. And like anybody else, I'm an accountant. I only can analyze data that is given to me. And if wrong data is given to me that I analyze, I'm going to put out the information based on that wrong data. And so what we've laid out is the proper data that should be and should have been taken, stuff that should be reported on a monthly basis to City Council, which has not been reported. The Inspector General just used the information that she collected based on the information that CPD was collecting, which wasn't always the right type of data. That's number one. Number two, what you cannot capture in data is that when ShotSpotter detects shooting and they do deployments and put people around area, what you're not detecting is the number of shootings that were stopped. And that's why I'm telling you, if ShotSpotter is eliminated, we are bragging right now about shootings are down. That's because of things like ShotSpotter, a tool like ShotSpotter. That's not the only thing, but that's because of tools like ShotSpotter. And I guarantee you remove it, you're going to see those increases. When you talk about spending money on root causes, everybody know what the root cause are already. I don't need to spend no money on how people have been in poverty. I don't have to spend money on that we need more economic development. I already know that. Just build, put people to work. And so from that standpoint, I know we have an opportunity here to, first of all, also keep people safe. And if something is working, it's working. And the subject matter expert who's very close to it, that's working with this tool, is the superintendent, Snelling, and I support his position on keeping ShotSpotter.
Alderman Sigcho Lopez, what other crime-fighting tools or technologies could be implemented in the place of ShotSpotter when that finally does end?
Well, I think, again, the issue that we have around dispatching calls, I mean, just over the weekend, we had an incident when a robbery in a ward, was reported out, but a detective never arrived to collect data, collect the evidence. So I do think that we have issues that need to be addressed, but it starts with accountability. I do think that the new call for 918 calls to reroute domestic violence calls, mental health calls, because the police department is not equipped to answer those calls. I do think there's certainly a role for technology, but I do think that when we cloud, and again, the percentage that where these incidents were actually captured is abysmal. 9% of the calls does not merit a $33 million investment. I do think that there is room for us to look at technology that works, rerouting calls, again, hand in hand with the investment on mental health, on youth opportunities, economic development. And what we know, it is at the root cause of all that, which is making sure that we address the ills that we have been with us for decades, and right? Which is the lack of investment. However, what I will end is that there's also reports, national reports, that guide that this kind of software does not do much without making sure that
I want to get Alderman Moore in here.
Excuse
me, thank you. We've got just a couple seconds left. Alderman Moore, if the measure is passed on Wednesday, the mayor could still veto it. What then?
Then he will be vetoing what the people asked for. It's one thing to say I make campaign promises, but it's another thing to listen to the constituents. All I'm doing here is listening to the constituents. This is not something David Moore is pushing from. This is the voices of my community, and I have to represent their voices.
All right, we'll be keeping an eye on all of you on Wednesday. Thanks to Alderman David Moore and Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you, Brandon.
Up next, local law enforcement is sounding the alarm on revoked firearm ID cards.
Chicago Tonight's coverage of public safety is supported by the Su Ling Jin Charitable Foundation Initiative for Reducing Violence in Chicago.
The Cook County Sheriff says more than 27,000 Cook County gun owners should not be in possession of their guns. That's because their firearm owner ID or FOID cards have been revoked, but they haven't turned in or turned over those guns. Sheriff's Office just released a report on this issue and is calling for legislation to address it. And Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart joins us now with more on this. Sheriff, welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, happy to be on.
So once a FOID card has been revoked, what is the process for that person either to get rid of the gun or for someone like your office to retrieve that gun?
You know, Brandis, the system is actually quite logical. To have a gun in Illinois, you have to have a FOID card, a firearms owner identification card. That's in then the state police system. And then if you do a certain act, you have that, the ability to have that revoked. So if you commit a felony, if you have an order of protection against you, if you have mental health issues that have required you to be hospitalized, and there's a handful of other ones. So they revoke the card. What is the flaw in the system, and it's a major flaw, is that there's never any mechanism in place to then go to that person's house and make sure that they cannot get to the guns, so that they either turn them over to law enforcement or they turn them over to a individual family member who is allowed to have guns. And so we pointed that out back in 2013. We set up our own unit that went out with the sole purpose of going to all these houses to try to get the guns. But as you can see from the numbers here, no one unit can do it. I can't tell you in the area that I'm in charge of, the area of Cook County that I'm the sole policing entity, we've gotten every gun, and it's been that way since basically 2013. Anyone who's revoked, we send someone out literally the next day and we make sure the guns are accounted for. But unfortunately, as you can see by these numbers, 85,000 people in the state of Illinois, there is no record of them counting for their guns at all.
And short of someone like your office going to retrieve that gun, what do you think is preventing a gun owner from complying with this requirement?
Well, I think, Brandis, because the system itself originally was set up, it made no sense. Because, think about it. No nefarious rationale or any reason here, but if you're a person who had your rights revoked, what would happen is the state police would mail you a letter saying, turn your card in. It never really referenced, this is 2013, never really referenced the guns at all. And so that person sometimes would send the card, sometimes they wouldn't, but there was no ability to go after it. And for an owner who either thinks that their rights should not have been revoked or they're going to get them back, I can see where they're, not complying, and people should have anticipated that. And so we work with the state police now to address that issue. But the big issue is there's just not enough resources, because these small towns, villages, and cities do not have people who are trained to go and do this. And so as a result of that, there's very few areas in the entire state where you can say, oh, that town has got no revoked FOID cards. And it's particularly scary, because when you look at the numbers, not just this 85,000 number, but the reasons why they revoked, that they're a clear and present danger to themselves or others, they have a serious mental health issue, they have a felony conviction, an order of protection, and run down the list. These are not people you want to be sitting there with guns. And particularly, I always tell people, the folks with the mental health issues, guns are the #1 source of suicides. And someone who has a mental health issue that we know about, and we also know they have a gun, and we're leaving the gun in the house, none of this makes any sense.
So, as your report finds, there are about 27,000 non-compliant gun owners in Cook County alone, 84,000, 85,000 across the state. What would you say, why do you think this current system of removing guns is ineffective? And what are some of the challenges that your office faces when you're trying to meet this out?
Well, it's just the enormity of it. So as I said, our units go out and we take care of all the things we're in charge of, but then we go into other towns and villages that don't have the resources to do it. But when you have 27,000 of them, I have basically, I think it's 8 or 9 people in the unit. And then you're adding, here's the big thing, Brandis, you're adding 150 new revoked cards a month. You can see where you can't catch up with this thing unless you put together a more structured procedure where you have regional task forces that go out into these smaller communities that don't have the ability to do it. And there is also something to be said in certain communities, the Second Amendment's a really, really strong, big deal. And so, how aggressive people are in following through on some of the stuff, I can't speak to that, but I can tell you the numbers are not good.
So, and let's get into some of what you're advocating, because you would like to see legislators approve money to fund revocation enforcement, maybe establishing these regional teams that you've mentioned. How would additional funding help? And is funding necessary, or could lawmakers implement a penalty for failure to comply?
Yeah, Brandis, we thought about that. We've been working with the state police on this, and frankly, we want to get the money to them to disperse. I don't want it coming to me. I want them to have more so that they can help these small towns and villages. And they're on board, and we've worked with them over the years on this, but it's really just a couple of communities that are doing this. Chicago has a team, we have a team, and state police, and there might be 1 or 2 other ones. But the reality of it is that penalties, there's already penalties in place, frankly, if you don't comply with this, if you either don't fill out the records, you lie about them. That's not going to do it. You really need someone to go to the door. And I can tell you from the many body-worn camera videos I've watched over the years on this thing, they're very difficult situations, because you're going to a house with someone who has some issues, and you're asking them to give their guns to you or give them to a loved one who can legally have them. So it's a little bit dicey. You just can't throw people into this. But at the same time, how in God's name can we continue to talk about all of the gun violence and all the issues that we have with gun violence? And here we have 85,000 people and counting and adding who we know shouldn't be around guns, and they're sitting in their house. We have their addresses. We know where they're at. We also have documentation showing that they went to gun stores, and we're inquiring and most likely purchasing guns as well. So that's where, as I say, a structured approach here, Brandis, I think would be helpful. Penalties, I just don't think would be effective.
Sheriff, the Illinois State Police sent us a statement on this, and it says, quote, ISP provides grants from the State Police Revocation Enforcement Fund to law enforcement agencies to conduct firearm enforcement. The fund receives money from the Firearm Owners Identification Card Act, Firearm Concealed Carry Act, and other firearm offenses. We strongly encourage law enforcement agencies to apply for a grant to conduct firearm enforcement details. Is this not enough? Is there just a lack of awareness by smaller agencies that this kind of money exists?
You know, Brandis, this is one of those rare cases where you can just sit there and say, look at the numbers. Do you think the system's working? I mean, is there anybody who would look at this and say, oh, it's going pretty good, it's working well? No, we're at almost 85,000 revoked throughout the state, and we're adding 150 new ones a month. My God, I mean, you'd be stretching it to not understand. It's not working here. And so that's why when I talk about, yes, you know, small law enforcement agencies can apply for those grants, but I think at the end of the day, you're going to have to come up with some regional task force model like we do in other areas as well, where either the state police, myself, other people could sort of head up teams to go out and do this, because otherwise it's not going to get done. This has been going on. We've had our team since 2013. So we've been doing this over a decade. The numbers keep getting worse. So anybody who's like of the opinion things are working well, I think, you know, they ought to take a look at these numbers. If ever you've seen a broken system, this is it.
Okay, Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart, keep us posted. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, the cicadas have arrived. What you should know right after this. They are officially here. After months of anticipation, 2 different broods of cicadas are busting out in massive numbers across Illinois. WTTW News reporter Patty Wetley joins us now with more on what we can expect. Patty, remind us. Yes, I know.
They're here.
They're here. It's very exciting. So remind us why this year's cicada emergence is a big deal.
Well, in Illinois, we are getting 2 emergences. You know, one's exciting enough, but we've got a 17-year brood here in northern Illinois and a 13-year brood in southern and central Illinois. Now, mind you, they don't overlap. I keep needing to remind people it's not double the cicadas. One brood north, another brood south, but pretty much all of Illinois is covered at this point.
But they are happening at the same time,
yes,
though not necessarily in the same place.
First time in like over 200 years that they've both come out at the same time in Illinois.
And that is a big deal.
That's
First
a big
time in
deal.
200 years.
Yes.
So there's been a split in our newsroom about
Yes,
whether
there
people
has.
saw them this weekend or didn't. Some of us have definitely seen them. Will they eventually be everywhere in the area?
No. I had to travel to go see them because I live in the city proper, in Northside neighborhood. We're not getting any. Everything there has been like so paved over and developed. You're not going to see them on the lakefront either because these cicadas need trees to survive on underground. There's a beach on the lakefront, not trees. So a lot of places, agriculture land, places that have been really developed, you're not going to see them. So they are not going to be everywhere. Inside the city of Chicago should be a safe space for any bug-averse people.
They're tree
Sorry
loving.
for the rest. Like,
Yes.
I had to travel out to the suburbs to go to see them
All right,
myself.
so city dwellers might not get so many. They're going to have to leave. Everybody's favorite part of cicadas, the incessant noise. When is that going to start?
Has not started yet. So I was out in a brookfield yesterday, and you could hear a few. So they actually don't start singing, which is their mating call,
Sure,
for like 4
singing.
or 5 days. Singing.
Yeah, singing.
So it's going to take a while for those first individuals, and then as more and more of them emerge, you know, every 4 or 5 days, it's going to be more and more and more. So the experts that I talked to said, let's say within 10 to 2 weeks, they should be at full throttle.
10 days to
and
2
then it
weeks.
is at like 90 to 100 decibel range. So it's loud.
It's loud, yeah.
And it's kind of constant. So
I'm not gonna lie, I live in Skokie, Evanston, and we had quite a few at our house over the weekend. And my boys are having a lot of fun, including there's one crawling on my son. There he is in our driveway. What should people know about handling them?
Well, for one thing, they're harmless. They don't sting. They're not going to hurt you. For us to not hurt them, try not to damage their wings. They're pretty resilient from what I understand. And so if you want to pick one up, you want to look at it, flip it over, see, you know, striping on its abdomen, look at for that organ that it has that makes the sound, you know, and then put it back on a tree. But you know, if you have a kid who's really curious and interested and wants to collect some of them, maybe either let them go or just collect them. There's trillions of them. So the folks I've talked to said it's okay. If we
just be
lose
nice
a
to
few,
them.
but
Don't
be
hurt the
nice to
wings.
them.
My son thinks he found one that might be albino, but that feels like another
Some
discussion.
of them have blue eyes.
Oh boy.
So, and
okay.
that's rare.
All right, Patty, thank you. I'm sure we'll be talking about this again more.
Yes, we will.
Thanks so much. And if you've got more questions about cicadas, like whether they sting or are safe for your pets to eat, visit our website for more Patty's coverage. It is all at WTTW.com/cicadas, obviously. And that is our show for this Monday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Chicago Public Schools gets a new funding formula, what it could mean for teachers and students. And state lawmakers work to approve a budget ahead of the quickly approaching deadline. Our Spotlight Politics team on that and more. And we leave you tonight with a stormy scene our camera caught at Navy Pier earlier today. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, which is proud to honor founder and senior partner Robert Clifford, who has been named in Forbes' 2024 list of America's top 200 lawyers.